Hi everybody, and welcome to Solo Female Van Life Lessons. My name is Santina Doyle, and I lead a meetup group on the East Coast called Solo Female Van Life Lessons. We have meetings every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and you do have to join the group and RSVP for the Wednesday lessons if you want to attend. So feel free to look on Meetup and look up Solo Female Van Life Lessons. However, I do not record the sessions, and some of the members, we have about 80 members now, some of them have requested a recording of the previous lessons that they weren't able to attend. Now, I didn't record them at the time, and I don't plan to record going on, in the future, because I believe that people who join Meetup or Zoom calls should be able to have some privacy to ask questions that they want and not have it published on the internet. So what I told my members, who are called Wannabes, is that I would do separate videos for YouTube and post them on a channel called Solo Female Van Life Lessons, and they could always go back and refer to them. Now, there won't be a lesson number 1 because in the live meetup group on the Zoom call, our lesson 1 was just getting to know the people who had RSVP'd for the meeting and attended. And we talked about things such as what do they currently have in terms of a vehicle that they could camp in, and I believe you can camp in any vehicle. What kind of rig did they want in the future when they perhaps move on to part-time or full-time solo female van life? Where do they think where do they reside now, and where do they think they would domicile in the future? Did they have any pets that they would be taking on the road with them? Because that is a huge consideration as far as I'm concerned. What experience do they have either camping or traveling or car camping? What's their favorite place to go currently? And where's a place that they would want to go in the future that they can't go currently because of restrictions like life? So we answered those kinds of questions and got to know each other a little bit. So consider this lesson number 1, and we'll move into lesson number 2. In lesson number 2, the point I wanted to get across to the women who joined was just do it. If you want to do solo female van life, just do it now. Do it when you can. Do it on the weekends if you work. Take trips if you are retired. Take trips that are a little bit further and a little bit further away from your home, as long as you feel comfortable. Take little baby steps until you do feel more and more comfortable. I suggest that people camp out of their current car. I camp out of my Honda CR-V. I don't go for longer than a week, and so I'm very comfortable, and I don't have to bring very much at all. I usually boondock. I do not like to camp in campgrounds. I don't like to, number 1, pay for them, and number 2, I don't like that there are so many people around, so I prefer to boondock in national or state forests that are free, where you may or may not need to reserve a boondocking spot. So I usually camp without water or electric, and I don't need any of those things anyway. I bring my own water. As far as toilets, I can make use of a shovel and nature. So my suggestion for having women go out and try this in the current vehicle that they have is to avoid going out and buying a van, which might not be the right van for them, going out and maybe perhaps putting money into a build for that van, which might not be the right build or the right van, and to see if they actually like living not in their vehicle but out of their vehicle and living in nature. I think it takes a special kind of person who wants to be outside in all kinds of weather, in all kinds of temperature, and with all kinds of bugs and wild animals around. And I think you will, if you get out there in the vehicle that you have, you will know whether that gives you energy and you love that, or if you felt dirty and just wanted to go home and take a nice warm shower and crawl under your covers. And that's going to tell you, I think, for the most part, whether this lifestyle is for you. I know that when I go out into nature, I'm energized. I want to go hiking. I love sitting around a campfire with friends. I do like camping with other people. I don't like camping alone. When I plan to go full-time, I am going to be traveling large distances, and I will be camping or boondocking a lot alone, but just to get to several destinations, and then I hope to meet up with people at those destinations. So that's my plan for my social activity on the road. So what I suggest to the ladies who are wannabes, who are interested in this solo female van life, is to find some other ladies to camp with on a regular basis and try out these things and discuss things that they learn and get hints from each other and see how each other put their bed and their cooler or their refrigerator or their power station together and what things they bring when they go camping. On these Solo Female Van Life lessons on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, I can only tell you what I do and what works for me. And other people can speak up, obviously, on the call and say what they do and what works for them. But it is very personal, whether you bring multi-layers of clothing or whether you want a refrigerator or just a cooler, or you bring dry goods and just boil water and rehydrate your food. Everyone has a different style and it has to work for that person, and sometimes experimentation is necessary. So what I would suggest is find a group of people that you want to camp with, go as frequently as you're comfortable going, and see if it's a lifestyle that you're interested in making more predominant in your life as you go along. And stay closer to home at first and then go farther afield. I know this year was the first time that I had gone up to Maine. We camped in Acadia National Park for a week. It was a long drive. It was 14 hours from my home. And I learned some things while I was on the road for a longer period of time than my usual weekend camping. So it's always good to try to extend that period of time that you're out and the distance that you're away from home, just to see if you learn more and more things before you actually take a trip, maybe across country or to a national park that's really far away. So some of the things that we'll cover in the next lessons will be learning how to safety check your vehicle before you go on a trip. This is good information just for women who might not be mechanically savvy about their cars. There's some things that you can do to prevent some accidents or breakdowns that are easy to learn, which I'll share with you in the next lesson. And these are really good things to do before you go on an extended trip especially. But you should probably check some of these on a regular basis, on a daily basis, before you drive away. And I will go through the different ways that you can safety check your car, including if you're going on a very long trip like I did to Maine, where you need the reliability of your car. I actually had my mechanic check out my car, and it wasn't very expensive at all, but it gave me peace of mind that I could travel that distance and not perhaps have a breakdown of something that could have been preventable if I had only had someone check my car. And then in lesson number 4, we'll be talking about what you need to bring, and what you need is one thing: a list. You need a list of the things that you need to bring camping on a regular basis. I have a list in my bag that I bring my clothing in, and that list stays in that bag and it's covered in plastic, and every time I go camping I use that list to make sure I'm bringing everything I need and not forgetting anything. And it's an invaluable list because inevitably I would be forgetting to bring multiple things and I would be miserable without them. So I think it's very important that everyone create their own list because everyone wants to bring slightly different things. But I'll share with you in lesson 4 what my list is, and I'll be posting it in the description as well of that video. And then in lesson number 5, we talked about fear. Fear is one of the biggest considerations for women in this lifestyle. It's whether or not their fear is going to prevent them from trying it or even living this lifestyle. And fear is something that everyone has and is not something to be ashamed of. It's not something for another person to poo-poo or to say, oh, you shouldn't be afraid of that. Fear is just, it is what it is. If you're afraid of something, you're afraid of it. And you have 2 choices with that. You can live with that fear and live within that fear and let that fear define the boundaries of your life. Or if it doesn't seem to be a fear, how do I say this? If it's, obviously jumping off of a building is a fear and no one's going to do it. No one's going to take that risk, right? That's not a rational thing to do. And so your fear is preventing you from doing something irrational. A lot of our fears are not necessarily rational. We have fear of breaking down on the road and not being able to get help. We have fear of being alone and a man perhaps coming in and into our space and being weird or trying to take advantage of us, or just putting us in a position that we don't want to be in. All of these things are rational fears, but the likelihood and probability of something happening while you're camping or on the road has to be taken into account. And then you look at that fear and say, it's kind of weighing the risk of that thing happening versus the happiness that you will have by doing whatever it happens to be. So going to Maine and going to Acadia National Park. You see if the fear or the risk outweighs the joy you would have in experiencing that event. And you have to look at it logically and look at the probability and the impact that an event would have on you should it happen, breaking down or talking to a weird man who's approaching you and you don't feel comfortable. And you decide if there are things that you could do to mitigate those risks. Can you just get in your car and drive away? Do you have mace on your keychain? If you break down, do you have a person that you can call in that state who can come and help get you off the road? Or can you call a mechanic? Can you call the non-emergency number of the police station in that area and ask for help getting your vehicle towed? All kinds of things that you can look at to maybe counteract some of that fear. You're still going to feel it when you get on the road, but then if you do it anyway because it's something you really want to do and nothing bad happens, then maybe a little bit of that fear goes away, and the next time you're willing to take a little bit more of a risk, even when you feel a little bit of fear. So we'll talk about that in more length in lesson number 5. We actually extended our fear discussion into lesson number 6, but I think we'll probably be able to just recreate that in one video, not 2. And that's probably where we stand today. Let me see what lesson number 7 was. 6. Where did lesson 7 go? Lesson number 7 is solo female safety. And so those are all of the lessons that I've prepared to date, but some of the other lessons that we will be having in the future that I will record just individually, not on the meetup, are how do you purchase the right vehicle? What insurance do you get? Do you do a no-build build or do you do a build? How do you find free camping? How do you reserve camping if you're willing to pay for it? What do you do about bathroom facilities in all different kinds of situations? What about cooking? How can you cook on the road? And what about personal hygiene? How do you handle emergencies, especially being a solo female van life woman? We will discuss about going full-time, the benefits and the downside of that. What do you do with your pets? And how are you going to prepare for the time which might inevitably come for most of us, where we can no longer be on the road and we need to have a plan B for how we're going to live out the rest of our lives, perhaps not in a vehicle at a certain point. What do you do for internet and cell signal? Where do you do your laundry and how to do that? Where do you register your vehicle and where do you register your domicile or the residency, in which state, and what's the difference between the states? Are you going to do cooking on the campfire, and what do you need for that? How do you find others on the road so that you can maintain a social life? What are the tools that you need to do van life? How about boondocking? What's the difference between boondocking and campsites, and what's the benefit, what's the pros and cons, and what do you need in those different situations? How do you stealth urban camp? Are you interested in any bushcraft, learning how to build fires without lighter fluid or matches or dry wood? Is anyone interested perhaps in learning some of that? And then how do you downsize from a house or an apartment that you have now with all of your possessions and all of the things that you love into something that fits into a van? Or do you get storage containers or store furniture with friends or family? And then finally, maybe a lesson on first aid on the road for yourself or for anyone that you might encounter. So these are some of the topics that we'll be covering in the Solo Female Van Life lessons on the Meetup, which is for East Coast women. You can go to Meetup and search Solo Female Van Life Lessons and join. There are membership dues, but feel free to ask any questions that you have. The dues go towards helping to pay for the meetup itself. For our camping events, it helps us to purchase firewood and s'mores, because we always have s'mores. And so you're welcome to come and attend the Zoom calls, which are the meetup link once you RSVP for a meeting, for an online event. You'll RSVP for that, and then we would love to get to know you. And once we get to know you a little bit on the online calls, then we would welcome you to come and camp with us in person. And then there will be these YouTube videos for the lessons that will be separate from the lessons that I'm actually giving live on that Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time meetup. So I hope these lessons will be valuable to you. Please leave some comments if you have questions. I'll be happy to answer them, or if you would like me to address different topics in the live meetings as well as on these videos. I'd love your ideas and suggestions as to what topics to cover. And hopefully we get to know each other a little bit better, and maybe we run into each other someday on the road. So in the meantime, happy camping.